The 2024 World Yo-Yo Contest is just a couple days away, so what better time could there possibly be to get hype and celebrate past champions by ranking them all on a tier list? Now, as you can see, there is a GOAT tier at the tippy top of the tier list because, as always, once everything's said, done, and ranked, we're going to pick one very special freestyle to ascend to be the god of all world champions, the one true GOAT. So as you can see, we're starting in 1998. There are technically some world champions that predate 1998, but this is where the World Yo-Yo Contest became its own separate event instead of being held as part of the convention for the International Jugglers Association every year, and I think this is where the modern sense of a World Yo-Yo champion actually starts to exist. So these first three freestyles, Hiroyuki Suzuki, Joel Zink, and Yu Kawada, we're all actually going to put into this very special too early tier, because these are all legitimate world champions who obviously crushed it and earned their titles, but in terms of making a 1A world champion tier list, you have to understand that at this point in time, sort of just after or during the yo-yo boom, 1A didn't hold the same weight that it does now. See, 1A and 2A originally got their names from a system pretty much like minor league baseball, where 2A is more than 1A. At this point, most 1A was more like a single yo-yo doing 2A tricks. It just wasn't what it is today, so not to take anything away from these world champions, but to compare them against what 1A would become almost doesn't make sense. So I think the most respectful and fair thing to do is to put them into this too early tier, but still include them on the list so I can clickbait you with saying every world champion ranked and reviewed, or whatever I said. And then we get to Tomonari Ishiguro, 2001, Black's world title. And this one very much could go in the too early tier, but after rewatching it, I sort of think there's too much to this freestyle to put it there. The trick content is not quite there. It didn't really exist yet in 2001. There's not really much in this freestyle more advanced than Kuijibo, but Black's performance style is so electric, and I actually think this freestyle is really ahead of its time in a lot of ways in terms of how he's doing all of these really discreet and obvious scoreable elements that are presented immaculately and choreographed so well in a freestyle that's actually quite well constructed and still really fun to watch even today, even though it is sort of lacking the complexity, difficulty, modern 1A stuff. So I feel like it doesn't feel right to put it in the too early tier. I hope it's not too disrespectful to put this in the B tier just because, again, like, the tricks didn't exist yet. It's not a commentary on Black as a player, but it just can't really go any higher. Now, Black did famously invent Black Hops, which is probably one of the 5 most influential 1A competitive type tricks of all time. Black Hops is not in this freestyle. If this was where he debuted it, I think it might jump up a tier or two, because that would be huge. That's a huge moment in 1A. B for Black. I think it fits. B for Black. And now we get to Yuuki Spencer 2002, and you can really see why there is a too early tier when we watch this, because the technicality leap from Black to Yuuki is so immense, so exponential, so many orders of magnitude, right? And just this freestyle has crazy aura. Like, just watching it, it feels like in an anime where the main character is taking some really important exam, and then they're really nervous waiting for the results, and when they come back, it's like, oh, you actually got the highest score ever recorded. You can tell he's just yo-yoing and doesn't realize that this is going to define the future of 1A. And of course, it's not even just the technical stuff. He's also doing all this groundbreaking slack, and the Yuuki slack obviously is a banger to end all bangers at this point. You can tell from the crowd reaction, and he is not even looking up to acknowledge them when it happens. It's a freestyle that has so much aura and really means so much for the culture in terms of advancing 1A. I think honestly, like, what this means for yo-yoing is more impressive than the routine itself, if that makes sense. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in the A tier. I feel good about the A tier for this one. It hasn't aged as well because 22 years is a really long time, but it does just mean so much that you can't put it any lower. So it's A for amazing, probably. And speaking of advancing the game, and especially technicality, up next we have JD 2003. And this is actually the first 1A world champion who was using a completely unresponsive yo-yo. Would not come back if he tugged it. You can just tell that the technical style of yo-yoing has become so much more comfortable, and JD is so polished and clean and confident with it. More than anything, when I watch this freestyle, this is the point where I think 1A truly becomes modern. Like, you can watch this and it's fully engaging and entertaining on the level of, honestly, like 1A tricks you're gonna see today. These tech tricks are still really good and really cool, and a huge part of that is that JD has this just stunning technique and pacing to the way he does those combos. He really has a very unique 1A style that hasn't honestly been matched since. And then on top of that, he's innovating with grinds and stuff and changing Yoyo, because you really can't have the DNA without grinds. So it's just, putting this lower than S tier would be a crime, and I am not a criminal. I deal in truths and you can trust me. So S tier is where we're gonna put JD 2003, for sure. And now we get to the Hiroyuki Suzuki era with Hiroyuki Suzuki 2004. If you don't know, in 2001, Hiroyuki did a Mickey Mouse freestyle at Worlds, and I don't mean that in the slang sense, I mean literally Mickey Mouse with the ears and everything, and sort of earned himself the nickname Mickey, and wore shirts to prove it in some of the following years. And Hiroyuki's early style was very much this fun, high-energy, Eurobeat-fueled performance style. And I think this is sort of the peak of that, sort of where it starts to taper off and become the Hiroyuki Suzuki we know today, who's a little bit more cool, calm, dramatic, sunglasses fueled. And you can tell that he's really coming into his style as a player here. It does have great choreography. It does have him doing some of his iconic tricks like off the foot Jade Whip, the spinning flop to end it. Like it's a very good freestyle. It's very technically sound. But of all the Mickey freestyles we're going to talk about, I don't think there's any reason to choose this one, so we're going to put it in the B tier, which is, again, there's not even a C tier on this tier list for a reason, because every World Yo-Yo Champion is pretty amazing and well earned. But, I mean, as soon as we start talking about Hiroyuki Suzuki 2005, I think you can see what I'm talking about. Because to me, and this was the first Worlds I personally attended, so perhaps I'm a bit biased, but I really think this is probably the most complete freestyle ever done at this point in time. I think the composition of the routine is just stellar. I think that there are a lot of really good and really hard tricks in it. Like some of the grinds are a little bit ridiculous, and he does them at the end of other combos, which on a Yo-Yo GM speeder is not as easy as you might think. And this is also the first Worlds freestyle where anyone did a speed combo. I think Mickey had done it at Japan Nationals and maybe some other contests before this, but this was where it sort of took the world stage, where everyone saw that for the first time in a lot of ways, which kind of makes it one of the most influential freestyles ever done if you think about it. So I honestly kind of want to put this in S+, just because I really do think like everything is in its right place. The pacing of the freestyle is so good, but let's pop this in the S tier for now, because we have to talk about Hiroyuki Suzuki 2006, which I think 2005 is sort of like the mid-school of Mickey freestyles, and this is where he sort of became the Hiroyuki Suzuki we know today. He isn't wearing the sunglasses just yet, but the level of drama and just the composure on stage, the energy is so different. This freestyle, I think, even goes a step beyond what 2005 did. I also think that it kind of gets slept on, but there's some really cool tricks in this freestyle, even beyond what we think of as like the Mickey tricks. Like there's some really interesting slacks, it's really cool regen, and you can't talk about this freestyle without talking about the Texas Cowboy into horizontal Eli hops, which again, I was there. I think to this day, I've maybe not seen a single trick get a bigger crowd response than this. In my memory, people gave this trick alone a standing ovation. And I do think that this is the moment where all horizontal in 1A kind of traces back to, like, not the first time it was done by any means, but I think that especially in a competitive sense, everything traces back to this moment, this trick, and just the way he does it. Like the Texas Cowboy is a banger, and then the horizontal Eli hops were so different at that time, and then he even finishes it off with a cued green triangle. It's such a masterclass in freestyle pacing, banger design, and then he like keeps the energy high with the under the leg trick into the speed combo, which is ridiculously hard to do. This freestyle has it all, even more so than 2005 did. So for that reason, S+ is the only option. It's the only place this freestyle can go. I mean, back-to-back years he introduced tricks that completely changed the trajectory of competitive 1A. There's a reason this dude has the most 1A world titles of anyone. It's time to talk about Yuki 2007. If you know things about yo-yos, you might know that this is probably like the default answer for what is the best yo-yo freestyle of all time. One of the most insanely hype routines. The construction is brilliant, the tricks are amazing. And one of the really interesting things about this, I think, is that when most people think of Yuuki Spencer, they probably think of his technical tricks, and there really aren't that many of those in this freestyle. And yet, every trick is still pretty iconic and amazing, and absolutely got the crowd even more involved. This is one of the first really relevant freestyles that has these like cool binds as bangers. I think it really tells us something about the depth of Yuki's bag, the breadth of his style, just how much of a naturally gifted, talented yo-yo work he is. Yuuki Spencer's different. I also think something that's easy to overlook with this freestyle is how much it contributed to the culture of yo-yoing, culture of 1A, culture of yo-yo competitions, because this freestyle, everybody in the hall at this Worlds was waiting to see this one. Yuuki was saving his tricks, not showing stuff, because he wanted the impact to happen in that moment on that stage. And because of that, I swear to you, it has never been this loud before or since. Loudest crowd the entire time of any freestyle ever. And on top of everything else, there's just so many iconic moments about how he presents himself on stage, like the hub stack pulls, the jumping over it at the end. It's not about the tricks there, it's about Yuuki Spencer, it's about the aura, the energy. It's just so fire, man. It's so fire. I mean, can you guess where this might go? Do you have any idea where this freestyle might place? Yeah, it's going to be S+, and we're gonna put it at the top of S+ for now. Don't act surprised. And following that up, we have John Ando 2008. This might be the most different freestyle of all time. This routine is so unique. One of the top 10 tricks that science still can't explain is in this freestyle. And every trick in here is gorgeous in its own right, but also, at the time especially, all of these tricks, the body tricks, the big moves, were just like mind-bending and unheard of. The entire game changed overnight because of this freestyle. It opened up so much creative space, figuratively and literally, in 1A. Even the more normal tricks in here are just done so perfectly, and like there's something special to all of it. This freestyle has impact. This freestyle is legendary for a very good reason. I think it holds up 100% to this day. We already talked about some routines like Mickey and Yuuki who changed the game and innovated certain trick types. I'm not sure if any other freestyle may have really influenced as many tricks and players as this one did. There is so much that traces right back to this freestyle. But yeah, this is it's just, I don't understand how you can put this anywhere other than S+. It's the birth of body tricks. It is an entire archetype that is super important to 1A, in my opinion at least, and this is where it all comes from. That's worth everything. So now we get to Shinya Kido's 2009 world title. I feel like Shinya is a victim of really poor timing with this. What I mean by that is, first of all, this is the year where Yuuki Spencer missed out on making finals, Jensen Kimmitt kind of forgot his routine and bombed on stage, so I think in some people's minds, this freestyle is kind of Shinya got lucky. You know, Shinya didn't have the same competition other world champions did, which I don't know if that's fair. Imagine how different the narrative would be if everyone had qualified and gone clean, right? Like, this less storied player came up and won against these absolute titans of the scene. It'd be a pretty inspiring, cool story. But instead the narrative is a little bit less celebratory, and I just feel like this freestyle kind of deserves more credit than it gets because of that. It also doesn't really help that this is coming right after Yuuki and Ando's wins, because Shinya's approach to competitive 1A is, you know, a little bit more traditional than those two. It didn't have quite the same innovative impact on the scene necessarily, but I do still think he added a lot. I mean, Hiroyuki may have opened the door to horizontal, but I feel like this was the freestyle where everyone was like, oh, we have to do that. Like, this is really worth investing in. And I also think that Shinya has really strong technique. He makes all of his tricks look so good. I think he plays with the speed at which he's yo-yoing in really smart and appealing ways this freestyle. It's very fun to watch. And you know, I have to point out, like, Shinya actually looks like he's having fun up there, which is actually really rare for a world champion, maybe? I don't know, it's just a little bit different. As much as I feel like this freestyle may have been done sort of a disservice by context and hindsight, it is unfortunately still, I think, a B-tier routine. I think it's gonna slot right in here. Well, let's put it up a little bit higher, because it's not fair to say they didn't contribute to the scene. It's just not quite legendary in the way that a lot of these other routines kind of are. Jensen Kimmitt 2010. I feel like there was a time in history where probably 90% of players would put this right up here instantly, and maybe even completely disregard your opinion if you disagreed. It is difficult to overstate the stranglehold Jensen Kimmitt had on the yo-yo community for a couple of years. I mean, this dude was literally like Michael Jordan. He looked unstoppable. If he showed up, you knew who was gonna win the contest. Players were obsessed with him. Everyone wanted to yo-yo like him. Everyone wanted to be like him. If we had tabloids for the yo-yo community, what Jensen Kimmitt had for breakfast would have been front page news. People were so invested in everything about his character. He had an immense impact on the scene and the culture, and I think that really shows strongly in this freestyle. This is an unbelievable routine. routine. I think he really pushed the boundaries of technical yo-yoing with his hop-based style, which was not really as explored in these kind of technical mounts until he did it, and he completely broke the judging standards and system of the time. We'll talk about how in 2011 led to things actually getting changed, but this was just absolutely maxing it out, and something had to change because there was nowhere else to go from what Jensen did. This really is one of the most iconic routines ever done on the world stage or any stage. I feel like Jensen was sort of the first person to just completely master every aspect of 1A, every type of trick you could ask for. There's almost nothing to critique. Like, the choreography isn't 10 out of 10 perfect, but he does so much with a song that seems like it has so little. Everything about this freestyle just like oozes absolute mastery and intuition, like natural talent. Do you have a guess maybe about where this is gonna finish? I mean, there's no way to put this anywhere other than S+. I don't even know if these are ranked in here. They're all so good. Now, Marcus Co 2011. This is another routine like Shinya's, I think, that sort of gets done a little dirty by circumstance, because so much of the narrative and lingering legacy of this freestyle is, he switched twice, how did he win? And I just think that that's like, how do you watch this freestyle and that's what you take away? This is one of the most belligerently difficult yo-yo freestyles ever done on stage, like maybe to this day, certainly up to that point. If you actually look at some of the horizontal and behind the back and horizontal behind the back that Marcus is doing here, these tricks are freakishly difficult in ways that people are still afraid to even try today. And the other tricks are not that much easier. He has this super aggressive approach to zoning that I think is so cool looking and honestly still pretty fresh today. Even his speed combos have some extra sauce on them and are done in a way that just looks a little harder than the average. So I really feel like the legacy of this routine should be that winning with 2 switches is a monster flex, not like some shameful thing. And I personally just really like a lot of these tricks, especially the drop triangle trick is so cool. We do have to talk about how after this world, the judging system was changed. We introduced evaluations in the modern sense and major deductions for the first time. And, you know, it's not exactly the reasons we'd want to be talking about this freestyle, but it is because of this freestyle, so it did have very tangible cultural impact. More than anything, I just think it's a really strong routine that deserves attention, and there's still a lot to take from watching it today. I think this is a freestyle that's actually aged quite well. So for that reason, let's put it in the S tier. Maybe, I think around there is right. Hiroyuki Suzuki 2012. You thought you'd heard his name for the last time, you hadn't. It's still here. And we finally get to talk about sunglasses Hiroyuki. Now, with all these other freestyles, it's been so much about the routine itself, the tricks they do, the impact it has on the scene. And for this freestyle, I just don't think that's really what's important. Bear with me, it'll make sense. Most of these tricks he'd been doing for a few years already, and I think it's pretty much the same set in his other freestyles in 2012. If I gotta be honest, I would say that his Japan Nationals from 2012 is the best Mickey freestyle of all time, and this one is just a little bit of a step down. But legacy is so much more than just the tricks you do on stage, and you need to understand that Hiroyuki Suzuki placed in the top 3 at Worlds every year from 2002 to 2010. Then he got 4th in 2011, comes back in 2012, wins the whole thing. That kind of longevity is unheard of and will almost certainly never happen again. To come back and win 10 years after first getting on the podium, 8 years after your first title is an unbelievable accomplishment. But there's even more to this than that, because you need to also understand, in 2010 and 2011, he used songs by the Japanese pop group M-Flow. M-Flow is actually like a real pop group from Japan, actual pop stars. And in 2012, Hiroyuki Suzuki's song, I believe is called Yo-Yo Drum Step by Taku Takahashi, who is one of the members of M-Flow, and it was made personally for this freestyle, which is one of the coolest things that's ever happened in yo-yo history. I mean, what else is there to say about that? Hiroyuki made yo-yo cool in a way that really no one else has, I think, before or since. And that is really special. So I think that to put this in B tier is simply disrespectful and I think incorrect. I think we can put this comfortably in A, because just the way this situates into the career of someone who is, by the numbers, almost inarguably the GOAT is too significant. It's so cool to get a famous musician to make your music special for your routine. Janos Karancz 2013. The Slack master himself. Janos can do things with the string that no one else had ever dreamed of before we saw him doing them, and I think most people cannot even come close to replicating to this day. That's what he's famous for. But when I watch this freestyle, what I'm struck by is how many other types of tricks there are in this, and how freakishly good he is at those too. There's some really intense hop tricks, there's some massive monster body tricks, leg tricks, like, this is a deep performance, and Janos does not look like he's playing against type when he does these other types of tricks. He looks just as comfortable as he does with his bread and butter stuff, which to even call it that feels disrespectful because those tricks are so hard. I also feel like this freestyle really signifies the end of an era. This is sort of the last time where the World Yo-Yo Championship was just decided by the tricks first and foremost, above everything else. I think that Janos is kind of the perfect player to cap off that era with, because his style is so unique, so difficult. And I mean, when I watch this freestyle, there's really something magical about watching him do banger after banger to a crazy Dropkick Murphys banjo solo while the crowd absolutely loses it. There's plenty of magic in this freestyle. It's as impressive as it possibly could be, and I think for all those reasons, and just like how it situates in yo-yo history, S tier is right. I just don't feel good putting it any lower than that. There's so many things in this freestyle that I think get forgotten when we think about who Janos is as a player. It even ends with a crazy horizontal bind. Like, it's just a sick routine. It's gotta go in the S tier. Gentry Stein's 2014 Worlds win. When I talk about the end of an era in 2013, this is what ended it. This might actually be the most cohesive freestyle ever done. It is about so much more than just the tricks. The pacing, the execution, the organization, composition, construction, the stage manners, the outfit. It's all here and it all comes together. As a yo-yo performance, this freestyle might legitimately never be matched. I think every year things get more demanding on the technical side of things, which makes it so much harder to put together such a coherent, themed, artistic show like this one. And of course, this freestyle is still full of so many iconic tricks done in the best order and the best possible way, and it all builds into the most triumphant speed combo you will ever see, and just an immaculate finish. I would actually kind of compare this to John Ando's freestyle in a weird way, in that I think this one also is just so aesthetically refined and perfect and shiny that it doesn't age with the years. Like, even as the metagame advances beyond this point, this freestyle still really holds up because it is just beautiful in its own right, in a way that is somewhat removed from the competitive side of things, and it still won, which is just so sick. For me personally, this might be the most influential routine that ever happened, and I know I'm not the only one. This was a complete game changer, and every serious competitor had to really rethink how they build a freestyle after this happened. And for that reason, it's too good and the impact is too large. S+, and it's a high S+ for me. And hey, I have made videos where I talk about that freestyle and this next one in more depth, so give them a look if you want a little more. Next up, we have Zach Gormley 2015, the first two world championships not to be held in the US, both won by US players. Something poetic there. And you know what? I'm not gonna waste your time with false suspense this time. This is an S+ freestyle. There's no way around this being an S+ freestyle. This might be the most dramatic 3 minutes of yo-yoing that have ever been done on the stage. What really makes this freestyle special is the immaculate, unrestrained, and thrilling presentation that is used to just sell some of the most inspired choreography ever done in the 1A division. No one else could make these songs work like Zach did. It's really something special. The amplitude of some of these moves is just nuts, like borderline irresponsible if you're trying to win the contest. Zach is up there yo-yoing like he doesn't care if he makes it home. And somehow it all works, because he's just that much of a legend. I really feel like Zach's earlier Worlds freestyles were very much focused on the tricks, but after Gentry's win, he had to come back with a new approach to construction and performance. And because of that, we get this masterpiece. It's a perfect example of the judging system really forcing an all-time great to be the very best they can be. And I think that is amazing and awesome. I've already teared it, there's nothing else to say. Next up, we come back to the USA so we can give it back to Japan with Shion Araya 2016. Now, very few people have ever had it like Shion does in terms of speed, in terms of power, intensity. He might have more of a traditional competitive style than a lot of the players we've talked about here, but almost no one means it like Shion does. The speed and size he throws down these tricks with is very tough to match, and I know that I'm personally afraid to even try. And that intensity makes this freestyle so hype to watch, especially with the song. And on top of all that, I feel like this routine actually is very influential. The metagame today is so much about counting every click and optimizing every second of your time on stage, and I feel like Shion is really the one who set the pace and pushed the envelope in that direction. The way that at least American players approach the game definitely changed in the wake of Shion's reign, and he deserves credit for that. The freestyle itself might not have quite the same level of, let's call it X factor, that some of the others do, but I'm kind of tempted to put it in S, but I feel like high A is about right. Let's keep these balanced out. But coming back to this freestyle, I always like it more than I remember. And then he did it again, it's Shion Araya repeating the title in 2017. Now this is pretty similar to his previous win, and a lot of the tricks are the same between the two, though in 2017 he did definitely trim some of the fluff and add some stuff that I really like. The thing about this freestyle is that when I think of the 2016 routine, I think you bring the heat, you bring the fire, and then like the most intense hops you've ever seen into Shion breaking the sound barrier. And when I think of the 27 routine, I think of the elephant noise. It just feels a little bit less cohesively put together, and I don't think it's quite as exciting to watch. And I also don't feel like there's a whole lot to take from this ideologically that wasn't already in 2016. So for those reasons, this one I think has to go down in the B tier. Okay, Worlds in Shanghai, Evan Nagao with a 2018 title. This is kind of part of a continuing series on world champions who get done a little bit dirty by circumstance. This was the first time that Worlds took place after US Nationals, which means that the surprise and hype factor of this freestyle wasn't really actually there in Shanghai, unfortunately. I probably should have just ranked this on the Nationals tier list and given it the S it deserved there, because it really did hit different at Worlds. Now, please don't get it twisted, this is still a great routine, and even a more reserved Evan who is playing the game still kind of goes huge and does it for the fans. But I think the best way to explain how I feel about this freestyle is that Evan himself kind of made a video apologizing for not doing more interesting tricks, not doing the tricks he wanted to do to win Worlds when he won Worlds. He had to play to the judges instead of following his heart, which is kind of the influence of Shion that I'm talking about. And then adding to that, this freestyle is kind of just a worse run than he had at Nationals in terms of missing a couple of the big tricks and just not having quite the same impact because of that. Now, I do want to give credit and say that I think this freestyle and Evan as a player are a major reason that 360 tricks have become so popular in the competitive scene. But even with that, I think this one just ends up in the B tier. That seems right to me, unfortunately. Should have been S tier at Nationals, but just didn't quite feel the same at Worlds. Now, Gentry Stein 2019. This is another freestyle that I think requires some context to properly appreciate. For the 2018 contest season, Gentry pretty much threw out his repertoire of material and came up with more or less an entirely new trick set that was significantly more difficult. And just 1 year after going through that metamorphosis, he actually recaptured the world title with it. I don't think I can overemphasize just how difficult it is to put together that much new material that quickly and have it work that well. So this freestyle really symbolizes just how difficult it is to be on top and how quickly the game changes in just a few short years. But it's also a testament to Gentry's resolve and tenacity as a player. In a lot of ways, it's more impressive to claw back to the title half a decade later than it is to just stay on top for consecutive years, and especially to do it with so much new material. And speaking about the actual routine and not just its context, I think that this does a beautiful job of balancing the technical demands of yo-yoing 5 years after his first win with that same approach to composition and cohesion and performance. It's a really fun freestyle to watch. I think it's brilliantly put together, and he somehow looks like he's actually having fun up there, even though he's doing this hyper-competitive, difficult freestyle. Maybe because he gets to do dance moves to The Weeknd. I also just have to mention that this freestyle was actually so good that it was worth 4 years of the world title. And even though we'd already seen this freestyle at Nationals, I think that the narrative behind it and the accomplishment that it represents are worth bumping it up a tier into A. I think I'll put it right next to the other Legacy freestyle. And now we're finally here. The most recent world champion to talk about is Mir Kim winning in 2023. We saved the best for last. Maybe. We'll get to the gods here soon enough, but let's talk about Mir. I think that this is actually one of the most difficult routines to rank because in terms of just raw difficulty and impressiveness, I mean, it's GOAT tier, it's not even close. But I also feel like because this is such a recent routine, it's sort of hard to situate in Yo-Yo history because we don't really know what sort of legacy and impact it's really going to have. And then there's also like, not only is this the most difficult 1A freestyle ever done on the world stage, I'm pretty sure it's also the cleanest. How does that even happen? Some of the tricks in this are so freakishly difficult that I don't know how to react to them. And then the choreography is really strong too. There are actually some parts that are cued really tightly to the lyrics that I did not notice at first. And of course there's the Michael Jackson dance moves to go with it. So what I'm saying is that this freestyle is impressive on definitely way more than the technical level. And the fact that this was Mir's first in-person Worlds final is truly ridiculous. But here's the crazy thing. Even though the spectacle of this routine is unlike anything we've seen before, even though the technical side of it is so brain destroying that it's still hard to believe it actually happened, I'm gonna shake things up here and I'm gonna put this at the top of S instead of S+. And here's why. There are all these little things about Mir's technique and composition, both of the combos and the whole routine, that strike me as very unusual. And I can't figure out yet if that's because Mir is so far ahead of the game that he's reinventing Yo-Yo as an art form and a competitive discipline, or that this just isn't even close to Mir's final form yet, and he's somehow going to blow this routine out of the water in the next few years. If he can keep performing like this, I don't think it's any stretch to say that there are more world titles in his future. So if Mir can keep winning, we don't know what kind of improvements he's going to show, and I feel like if that happens, it will validate this S tier placement. Basically, I'm super excited to see what the legacy of Mir is going to be like, and frankly, I'm just very excited to see how his style will continue to develop and how he's going to guide the community going forward. Because right now, he kind of seems like a superhero, and I honestly don't know where his ceiling is. Alright, now it's time to reveal who the one true GOAT world champion is, but before we do, quick subscription check, press the good buttons down there, and hey, write a quick comment down below, tell me what you agree with, disagree with, who your GOAT is. I really want to know and I'd really appreciate it. But for me, once again, the choice was really clear from when I started working on this. It's really tempting to just pick Zach because that freestyle is so undeniable and the theatricality pushes it over the top with those unreal tricks already. I'm also really tempted to say Gentry because this freestyle just meant so much to me personally and was such a guide for my style. Or I think the cultural narrative is to pick Yuuki Spencer 2007. I feel like Yuuki's 2007 freestyle is like a canon event for yo-yoing, and I don't want to disrespect that. But for me personally, there's only one freestyle that can really be considered the GOAT 1A world champion. And that has to be John Ando's win in 2008. One of the things that makes yo-yo such an amazing hobby is that while it does have this intense competitive side, it also has this really beautiful artistic element, and those two are so often woven together so tightly. And I think that's really unique and so cool. And I can't think of any routine ever done that opened up more creative space and did more to advance yo-yoing as an art form than John Ando's freestyle. And for something like that, for something that has that kind of deep, personal, artistic meaning, to win the most prestigious title, to be the world champion, is so cool and truly one of the reasons that I'm proud to be a member of this community, one of the reasons that I've stuck with this hobby for so long, one of the reasons I'm making this video and I love being here. And then on top of that, the tricks are just so cool. He does Anaconda behind his head. What do you want? What's better than that? These are special tricks. These are inspired and cool looking, and they still look cool now. This is just something that I can't ask for more from. For my money, John Ando is the only pick for the GOAT world champion in 1A. All right, we did it. That's the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you at Worlds, which I'm sure is very soon after this video gets posted. So say hi there, because for now, I've got to fly.